Hi everyone. In today's lesson, we're going to talk about how to graph sine and cosine curves with vertical shifts. So it could be a sine or a cosine graph, but it doesn't matter. The concept is still the same. A is still the amplitude. B is still the cycles. So A is my amplitude. B is still my cycles. But this time I've added a plus or minus D. And this is my vertical shift. It's also referred to as my midline. Okay, and if I am going plus D, that means I'm going up. And if I have a minus D, that means I'm going down. So we're going to talk all about that in an example. But first, we need to just review one more time our A, our C, our P, and our I. Remember that our amplitude is the absolute value of A. The cycles is B. Period is 2 pi over B, where B is my cycles. And the interval, what we count by, is our period divided by 4. So let's get to a graph. So again, in order to graph this, we need our A, our C, our P, and our I. So A is the absolute value of the number in front. So the absolute value of 3 is 3. B is our cycles, or the number in front of the X. And if there's no number, we can assume a 1. So my cycles is 1. Period is 2 pi over B, where B is my cycles. So 2 pi over 1 is 2 pi. Interval is our period divided by 4. Period is 2 pi. Divide that by 4, and we get pi over 2. So we need to graph 2 full rotations. If you remember from previous videos, that's about 8 tick marks, 4 per rotation. Okay, so let's count. So we have 1/2 pi, 2/2 pi, 3/2 pi, 4/2, 5/2, 6/2, 7/2, and 8/2. So let's simplify this. Any of them, these can simplify to pi. This can simplify to 2 pi. And this can simplify to 3 pi. And this can simplify to 4 pi. So we've got our 8 tick marks. Those need to go on our graph. Notice that there's no graph. The reason why there's no graph is because there's a vertical shift. So you need to know what your max and min values are in order to write or create the best XY axis. So we remember that our maximum value is the midline plus the amplitude. So in this case, our midline is this plus 4. This is our vertical shift. So midline or vertical shift means we're going to be going up 4. So the midline being 4 plus the amplitude being 3 tells me that the highest point on this graph will be 7. And our minimum value is when we take the midline and subtract the amplitude. So the midline being 4 and the amplitude being 3, we subtract those, we get 1. So the lowest value on this graph will be 1. So if we know this, when we sketch this, we can put our y-axis here, which is great, but we only need the graph from 1 to 7. So I'm going to justify the x-axis smaller because we don't need negative values. So you can go ahead, put your 1 here for your minimum, put your 7 here for your maximum, and your midline is your vertical shift, right? So your midline can be right in the middle at 4, and your midline always is expressed as a dotted line. And we're going to graph the graph now based off of this. So let's set up our x-axis with these values that we have. So we've got 1/2 or pi over 2, 2/2 or pi, 3 pi over 2, 4 pi, which is 4 pi over 2, which is 2 pi, 5 pi over 2, 3 pi, 7 pi over 2, and 4 pi. So we need to create a positive cos graph. So we need to have in the back of our head that a positive coast graph does this. Down, down, up, up, right? All with respect to our midline. So it doesn't matter where our midline is. It just so happens that our midline is here. So my first value of a positive coast is going to start up at its max. So we're just going to start up here. So we've got a max at 7. Then we're going to go, so if this is our max, then we go to our midline. So we're going to go to our midline at pi over 2. Then at pi, we're going to be down at 1. So remember, it goes max, midline, min. So max, midline, min. Then we go back up to the midline and then the max. So 3 pi over 2, we're at our midline, and 2 pi, we're at our max. And then we just keep following the pattern. 5 pi over 2, we're at my midline. 3 pi, we're at 1. 7 pi over 2, we're back at the midline. And 4 pi, we're back up. So if we connect down, down, up, down, up, we get a positive cosine graph. Now let's check our definitions. Do I see one cycle between 0 and 2 pi? Yes, I do. Does the period take 2 pi? It completes one cycle in 0 to 2 pi. Yes, it does. So my definitions check out nicely. So just to recap, when we're doing a vertical shift graph, the only difference between these and the ones we did the other day is that you need to find your max and min values so that you could justify your x-axis where it belongs, and you need to put your midline with a dotted line, and then you just graph based off of what you see. So in this case, we had a positive coast, so we graphed up at the max, and then we went down to the midline, and then down to the minimum, and so on and so on. All right, let's see if we have another problem to try. Okay, so this one is now asking us to graph one full rotation of a -5 sine graph. So I'm just going to start this off for you. So a sine graph is negative. So if this is my midline, it's starting at my origin and going down, up, down. Now I shouldn't have said origin, it's starting at my midline. So wherever your midline is where you're going to start. So the A is the absolute value of the 5, B is the number for the cycles, and 3, or -3, is my midline. So I'd actually like you guys to try this one. And it's okay if it's not right, but at least just give it a shot. See if you can find the A, the C, the P, and the I. See if you can set up an axis, and we'll start class by going over this one tomorrow. All right, have a great night.